Sports Network production. Now to your host.
All right, welcome everybody to week 12 of Talkin the Gridiron here on Variety Sports Network. Again, I am your host, Daren Breyer from Fat Boy Fadeaway Sports. And with me, I got Jimmy from the Far End of the Bench podcast, as usual. And I got a special guest with me this week. And if you have watched my podcast at all, we have had a couple of times over the years here. I got Damian Adams, kind enough to join us here this week on Talkin the Gridiron. Gentlemen, a lot to get into this week with week 12. There are some dramatic finishes, some kind of like we're starting to get into some playoff pictures here. It's starting to shape up a little bit. So kind of curious to get your guys' takes on a lot of different topics here. First, I want to let everybody know here, like I said, brought to you here by Variety Sports Network. I got my guy Jimmy at the Far End of the Bench podcast. You can check out his podcast there. Jimmy, you guys do a podcast this week? Remind me.
Yep, we did. We dropped one on Thursday for Thanksgiving. Got a big Thanksgiving feast in there. We talked about pretty much everything, and then Nico gave like a World Cup recap because I didn't turn anything on until Friday. But yeah, we did drop an episode, and then we'll have another Top of the Mountain this week because Colorado Mines moved on to the semifinals in the D2 playoffs. So I got a couple more episodes Thursday and Friday coming this week on Variety.
Hey, I'm going to do a World Cup one right now. It's going to tie. Tuesday. I'm just kidding. All right. And like I said, I got David Adams here from the Real Deal podcast. Listen to he had a good podcast out this week talking about a few other things. The Iverson basketball-wise that did catch my attention. I like that little part of it, especially. DA, how you doing tonight, man? I'm really happy you could join us a little week, get your perspective on the NFL.
Oh, man, I'm glad that you guys have me on. I'm always glad to do a podcast with you. Love talking sports with you. So looking forward to it, man.
And tell the people where they can find you at, my friend.
So, yeah, you can find me on social media at The Real Deal WDA. That's The Real Deal. W as in whiskey, D as in Delta, A as in Alpha on all social media platforms. You can find my podcast, The Real Deal with Damian Adams, on all podcast platforms. So wherever you like to listen to podcasts, go ahead and check out The Real Deal with Damian Adams. You'll catch me talking NFL, NBA, boxing. I put my own spin on things like Daren put reference to earlier. I did a little Iverson rant about rest on my last episode. So you're going to go check that one out. And also the 3rd and 3 podcast I do as well on Wednesday nights live on Facebook. That one also is available on all podcast platforms as well. But if you join us live, you can join the podcast, ask questions, be in the comments. And it's just a really good time, man. So check us out on Facebook Live for the 3rd and 3 podcast every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you're listening here, that's the panel tonight, and we're looking forward to getting their takes. And like I said, week 12 starts to really kind of. We're starting to get into like the winter here. I stepped outside in my little place. I'm cold out here. I know I can't talk weather.
Are you cold?
Do you want to know where he's from?
Arizona, 23 degrees right now. I got my window open because it's too hot in the house.
Wow. I'm definitely not made for the cold weather. Grew up in Louisiana. Moved to California, down in Arizona. Like I avoid cold weather at all costs.
I keep hearing all these rumors like Dion's going to see you. I was like, Dion has come out multiple times to say he doesn't do cold weather. So there's no way he's not. If he does come to see you, we're never making a bowl game because it's going to be December and he's going to be like, yep, nope, it's 30 degrees, no practice. Sorry, guys.
All right, Jeff, let's get this party started here. Opening drive here. Like I said, initial thoughts on week 12. Jimmy, let's start with you. Anything that kind of like just kind of caught your attention real quick before we jump into the games here?
There's certain teams that don't have as good of a record as I think people were maybe expecting or that you would say and be, wow, they're having a great season. However, like I think back to Thanksgiving, Detroit looked really, really good against Buffalo. That was a great game. And I know I kind of go back and forth on Dan Campbell. Not quite sure if his shtick is totally working, but it seems to get the guys playing well. And they were in that game for a lot longer than I thought they were going to be and made it a very good, it was a good starter on that Thanksgiving trio of games. But it's kind of like some teams don't have the record. They're not going to be in playoff contention, but they're still nobody that you want to see. Other teams, like, the Patriots, they're somewhat in the playoff picture, but I think everybody, you look at that offense and you're like, oh, it's easy pickings. All we got to do is score like 10 points, and it's tough because that New England defense is still good, but it's kind of just up and down. Schedules don't really matter at this point of the season. Every team is going to give you their best shot. I mean, look at the Jaguars and Ravens today.
Yeah,
that's like one of the – I'm happy about it. I'm not going to lie. I'm super happy about it, but it is still one of those things like I didn't expect. The Ravens should have been able to win that game and win it pretty easily, comparatively. When you're just looking at, if you're a casual fan looking at records, you're like, that shouldn't have happened. But here we are.
Yep, that's great. DA, anything stick out to you? Initial thoughts here, week 12, before we kind of jump in?
Yeah, man. Jimmy made some great points. This week was a really good week for like just good games. We had a lot of good games this week. But one that really stood out to me is not one where you would give this team a bunch of credit and celebrate, but they were being adults this week. Miami didn't play with their food, went out there and took care of business like a true playoff team. And normally when you have teams that are having like their first year kind of emerging, they run into these type of games, and that's when they have pitfalls, right? You always hear the trap game. Miami didn't play any games at all this week with the Texans. Went out there and dominated. The game was over pretty much, beginning of the second quarter, it was already done. And I like to see that when it comes to real contenders. That really stood out to me. And he mentioned Jacksonville. Baltimore's been a team that we've been waiting for all year to make that turn. Like, they're good, but we haven't seen them be consistently good yet in the game, play all 4 quarters. Honestly, now we're week 12. This is Baltimore. We have to accept that this is the team that we have here. This is a team that could make a run or could be out in the first round. Like, they're just an inconsistent squad. That's what they are this year.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing about this. When we start to get into this is where we figure out where the boys in the bed are here. And then we start to get the week 12 here, kind of separates a little bit. All right, this is my kind of first thought here. Early drama. We'll kind of go a little bit to Thursday here. Just pick a game out here, you guys. Which one you want to talk about more? I got Bills defeat the Lions, Jag Ravens, Browns over the Bucks in OT. They were all kind of late game thrillers like I had right there. Which one do you think maybe means more, even if it's not the best team? Like you kind of mentioned Dan Campbell there with the Lions, Jimmy. Why don't we start with you this time, DA? Is there one of those that kind of means more?
Man, the Browns win. Sneaky important because
I was going to say too.
Because you're getting back Deshaun Watson next week. They can make a run, and next thing you know, we're talking about the Browns as maybe making that sneaky run to that 7 seed in the AFC because the team has talent, and they've been in a lot of games this year. When you look back at their schedule, like this team could easily have 2 or 3 more wins when you look back at some of the games they lost this year. And for them to pull out this game was absolutely bananas. That catch by David Njoku to keep the game going, 4th and 10 back of the end zone was absolutely nuts. And their defense is starting to get together. Their defense has talent, and you've been wondering why they haven't been, really playing well. They're starting to get together, and now, like I mentioned earlier, Deshaun Watson coming back. That Browns win is sneaky important. Now for the Bucks, the loss doesn't really hurt that much because their division is so putrid, right? My Saints included in that looked just absolutely horrible today. So when you include that in there, the Bucks will be okay. They'll still be a playoff team, and maybe they can make some type of miraculous run. But the Browns could be a sneaky, scary team going late into the year.
Yeah.
Jimmy, you got you said you maybe were going to go Browns there with that. I like that point. We talked about them a couple weeks ago, or Tyler kind of brought it up with like the Browns, and we kind of were like, well, yeah, I guess you're right with him coming back. You can, if you got to touch on that, and maybe another game you want to piggyback on here.
I just think I told my brother when we were watching the games earlier, if the Browns lose 8 before Deshaun Watson comes back, their playoff hopes are done. I don't know what we're going to get out of him. He hasn't played in so long that it may come back and he may end up not being great, but you can get into the playoffs. That AFC North right now is probably going to beat each other up even more. I think that the winner of the division is probably going to have 6 to 7 losses, and the Browns keep themselves kind of in that race, not only just for the division, but they can get into the wild card. And what are the 2 things that travel the best? It's offensive line play, it's a running game, and it's a good defensive line. And they have Myles Garrett leading those guys on the defensive side. Their offensive line is probably top 3 in the NFL when they're all healthy and playing at a good level. It does scare me a little bit. I was hoping that they would lose more so just to kind of be out of that playoff contention. They'd still be a tough game down the stretch, but that was kind of where I was sitting at. I wanted to see them lose. I was glad that the Jaguars got the win over the Ravens. And yeah, the Ravens are inconsistent. That's what they've been ever since Lamar Jackson was their quarterback. Going back,
I feel like we've been saying that since like the preseason. Does it feel like
nobody listens to me? I mean, they just see me as the
I'm
Jaded
listening
Bengals
now,
fan.
man. I'm listening. All right.
They see me as the Jaded Bengals fan. Lamar Jackson is great, and he can get you a lot of stats. And if you have to get into field goal range to come back, yeah, he's probably the number 1 quarterback you would take because he has the extra ability to run. But he's not a guy that can throw you back into a game. He's not going to go 30 of 35 with 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in a comeback effort. That's just not the quarterback that he is. And the Ravens don't necessarily have they have the ability to get up on you, but they have the ability to blow these 20-point leads now. They're so inconsistent up and down. it resembles the quarterback position what they've had for the last 3 years.
That was one hell of a throw he had today, though. If we were taking one throw, that was one hell of a throw he did have today. That
Justin Fields makes one good throw a game too, but he also makes one boneheaded interception and can't get you over the hump. That's what I kind of see Lamar Jackson as currently. I think that in the right system, if the team is going to use him correctly, or if you're good playing that style, sure, you can commit to him. I just wouldn't commit to him currently. Like, my quarterback has to be above 50% on third down conversions, like 3rd and 5. I get that you can go 3rd and 3 and run the ball for a first down, or go 4th and 1. Like, your coach is putting you in those positions. He just hasn't shown me in the big moments that he's a playoff caliber, like a guy that can lead you in a playoff run.
The Ravens, their defense to me is what continues to be the surprise to me. Like, in the past, I just kind of expect them to finish these games off sometimes as well. Impressive win, I think, for the Jaguars. And what we see, the cojones to go for 2 there. That very, just to kind of a big move. And then I love Tucker. I mean, are you kidding me how good this guy is? I mean, just the fact that, like, they can send him out there and he literally comes, like, as close as
the fact that we went out there for a 67-yarder and everybody's like, he might make this. It wasn't
the worst. He's like the boogeyman of the division, and it kills me to say that the kicker is the boogeyman of the AFC North, but if he's within 70, he's liable. Like,
no doubt.
Probably going in.
Real quick, that Bills game, just to touch on real quick, they get the win. I don't think it's a huge win for him necessarily. Obviously, it would have been a massive loss for him if they would have ended up losing that game. So I think it's just to kind of go about their business win. I think the Lions, to me, are the one that's come out a little bit more impressive in that area.
I will say this about the Bills win, though, because they struggle in these type of games, right? The games where you need Josh Allen to come through at the end and have that big drive. And this one was pretty much one big throw at the end, but this is the moments where we haven't had the best of Josh Allen, right? We've seen him go against Minnesota, throw the interception to end the game and stuff like that. And normally he's a front runner, right? They get about 14. That's when you see Josh Allen beat Superman, right? So it was good to see them come through in these moments and beat a team like Detroit's been playing well. They were on a 3-game winning streak, right, going into that game. So I think this was kind of a big win for Buffalo in that aspect, but they still have some work to do to get back to being that Super Bowl favorite that we had them as at the beginning of the year.
Losing Vaughn, and then also, like, Josh Allen doesn't look healthy. That arm is bugging him. The throws that he was making early on, I was arguing all throughout Thanksgiving, like the initial part of the meal. We had our soup before we had our turkey, and it was like, he's just not – these throws are on a rope earlier on in the season, and he's completing them. Now they're floating a little bit. They're not coming out with as much zip when he needs to in the crunch time moments. And maybe that's a maturity thing, because he usually just puts 100% in all of his throws. And I know that they're not relevant now, but that's like the early issue with John Elway was he put 100% in all of his throws, broke his receiver's fingers. Maybe it's a good thing that he's learning when to go 100 and when not, but it was definitely kind of wasn't the game I was expecting. I thought they were going to start running away with it. Kudos to the Lions, because they just never go away. That's one thing that they've kind of proven all season, is that they're never out of the game, and they're always going to push you to the end.
They're the king of the backdoor cover too, for sure.
Nico's probably my co-host is like, the Lions, they've probably saved his bank account a couple times this season already.
That's funny. And the Bills, they like I said with the Lions too, they end up at least on a Thanksgiving Day they gave us a good game. That's always an important part as a lot. You're watching those more.
If you're gonna get the holiday game, at least make it entertaining.
Make it at least entertaining.
We got 2 really good games on Thanksgiving this year.
Yeah, I'd say
we don't get that.
Yeah, I'd say they were pretty good for sure on that one, and especially the night game. I actually thought was the way to do it. All right, let's keep this baby going here. Jimmy, let's go to your squad. Let's go to your Bengals. Was this an instant replay, basically, besides kind of last year's playoff game? It kind of, obviously got the same game, but it felt very similar. Just the pounded out style that Tennessee just can't get out of its way of playing. They just make these mistakes. Tannehill just isn't. It's just not that. Everybody knows that, but you're just hoping Henry is enough and the defense is enough to kind of. My guys, P Shark. I want them to have this. C Wood. I want them to have this success to the Titans there, but they just can't get enough points, man. And Jimmy, your Bengals, they didn't play great today, but they just have what the Titans don't have. They have big play ability, and Higgins, even without Chase, continues to be. He's the man. I mean, he's awesome so far.
Higgins is he's the truth. It's going to be really difficult because we're probably going to have to move on from Tyler Boyd, and Tyler Boyd's been there for a long time, but there's no way that you don't put your future into T. Higgins and Jamar Chase's hands. If you're this team, you got to keep those two receivers. I love the addition of Hayden Hurst. I think that's something that this Bengals team didn't have last season. It is pretty much rinse and repeat. The third downs is where kind of Joe Burrow put himself on the line there, and he wasn't playing great in the first half. I don't know what it is. Like, I have Sunday tickets, so I get to watch all of these games now. I've never seen a good first half outside of the Carolina game. That was like the only time that the Bengals actually showed up initially. But Anarumo, the defensive coordinator, gets these guys going in the second half. They make great adjustments, and that's probably where their edge lies. I think that's why they came and went on the run that they did at the end of last season. I wish they could come out and fire on all cylinders initially. This was the best game that the Titans could have played against them. And they were talking about it on the broadcast. They basically considered Tennessee. They've played each other. The Bengals and the Titans have played each other like 78 times. They consider them an AFC North rival pretty much, especially with the way that they play. But they had a great defensive game plan to shut down Derrick Henry. Put like 5 guys whenever Derrick Henry was in the game. 5 guys were up on the line of scrimmage no matter what. So they were able to submarine, cut them for short yardage outside of the one screen where we forgot about Derrick Henry. I don't know how you lose a guy that's 6'4", 245 pounds and runs like that. My biggest takeaway, Jesse Bates, you're playing on the franchise tag for a reason, my friend. I've been one of your biggest supporters. That was so disheartening to watch. That Derrick Henry screen where he fumbled it and Traylon Burks just falls 2 yards in front of Jesse Bates. Like, just jump on the ball. You're an athlete. You can change your body direction. I know you can do it. I've seen you do it. Give me some effort. Don't pull Cam Newton in Super Bowl 50. Don't do that now.
That's the voice of his favorite team. You can tell that right there. That's his voice. You can tell that's somebody that's he's blood, sweat, and tears right into that one.
Yeah,
and he got on the Bengals as well. Their victory there and just over the Titans, and maybe a quick thought on the Titans as well.
No, it's a good win for the Bengals. You definitely love to see that over a team like Tennessee is always going to be tough, right? We know they don't have that extra oomph to get over the top, but they're always going to be a tough team to beat. And we see this week in and week out. Even when they played the Chiefs with Malik Willis at quarterback, somehow they stayed in that game and made that a tough game without being able to really do anything on offense. Like, they're going to be in the game. So it shows maturity when you could be a team like that. So, congrats to Cincinnati, and hopefully Jamar Chase is back soon, and you guys will be, just a real deal in the AFC for sure.
So I kind of want to talk. We'll talk about the Bengals here in just a second, a little bit more here. Just a real quick. I'm not going to this game didn't mean anything to me other than it kept my eliminator, just for my survival league going here. Kept it going. The Dolphins end up winning again here against the Texans. I turned 30-0. Yep, there's the game right there. They get up 30 here. Tua continues to be. Continues to surprise me out of his mind. So here's my bigger question to you about those two teams is, and put it the best here word, would you rather have the Dolphins or the Bengals? Which offense is a little bit, more explosive?
That's a tough one. I would go Dolphins just because they have 2 dudes who run 4.3 and below. You have 2 guys like that, it changes everything. And what they're doing with their play calling, when you watch them play, they're very creative when it comes to getting those guys open. And Tua looks like a totally different monster now. He surprised me as well. I did not believe in Tua, and he definitely proved me wrong this year. And when you see that team, and then they added Jeff Wilson, hopefully he's not too hurt, but they added Jeff Wilson. I think that running back addition was big for that team. They have speed all over the field, man, and not just regular speed. Like, people are fast, and then Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are just fast. Like, it just zooms by everybody else. So I think that they're a little more explosive because of that dynamic speed they have.
I think too. I mean, Tua is doing the right things and not forcing the ball down the field anymore. That was kind of his downfall. He doesn't throw a great deep ball anyways, and he thought that that's what the offense is there for. And it's open most of the time, but it opens up all of the underneath routes, and he's starting to find and pick and choose his spots. It's what Zach Wilson kind of refuses to do if we're going to make the comparison in division, where you take the boring stuff. It's dink, it's dunk, it's dink, it's dunk. And all of a sudden Tyreek is open behind the safety for 15 yards. Now, if you get a disciplined defense that keeps their safeties back, it's a little bit different story, and you can maybe slow down that offense. But the Texans are in a race for, I think, probably Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, somebody like that. When they benched Davis Mills today, you knew that they were conceding this game.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting question. I kind of always sometimes look at teams and how they might match up in the playoffs as well. Right now, Jimmy, just to let you know, it's the Bengals.
If we get Jamar Chase back, I feel a lot better about it. And like I said, the disciplined safeties helps out. And as much as I kind of gave Jesse Bates crap for, Jesse Bates is good in he maybe doesn't give the best effort on those weird plays, but he's good in pass coverage.
Yeah.
He shut down Tyreek Hill in the second half in overtime last year, that Chiefs game in the AFC Championship.
Yeah, I always feel like, and it'd be interesting. Right now, the Bengals are supposed to play the Titans again in the playoffs, so we might have another.
Just don't get sacked 10 times. If we don't get sacked 10 times, we have a pretty good chance of beating the Titans. And even if we do, we still got a chance, I guess.
And with that said, I don't know if I would want to be at row one for that game, but I suggest you go to row one brand and get 50% off anything over in their art gallery. Use the code VSP15. You'll get 15%, like we said, off everything in the art gallery. Maybe they'll have a Titans Bengals picture there you can buy too with Burrow. Maybe what was the guy that got the interception last year? The big interception.
It was Jesse Bates.
He was the one in overtime that got it last year.
Pretty sure he either tipped the pass and it would have been Von Bell or Jesse Bates. It's one of the two.
And who was the guy getting killed
that would be Eli Apple, and he's also burnt toast this season too. If you watch that Saints game, DA, you got the one, I can't even remember his name, but he's going in jet motion, and they go on a jet sweep, and you see Eli Apple had him in man coverage, and he's still on the opposite side of the formation. You're just like, what are you? They're obviously handing it off to that guy that they're sending in jet motion, or they're going to throw it to him, one of the two. So he's still a liability, but like the addition of Mike Hilton, and Rev would love to be on the show and hear me say this. He brings a lot from that Steelers defense. I think that he's one of those emotional leaders that kind of puts them in the situation in the second half. Because like we said, before this Browns game on Monday night, that debacle, the Bengals didn't give up a single touchdown in the second half up until that point in the season.
Yeah, and you wouldn't expect that from them, from their team here. All right, I got another question for you guys. We got a little bit from Thanksgiving. Go back there a little bit here. Who's better, Cowboys or Vikings? I feel like they're kind of on like the, like I said, I'm going to compare them a little bit here. I don't feel like they're Niners, Eagles, so I feel like they're the next kind of group there a little bit. Maybe we can talk that a little later here, but from that game Thursday night, Dallas gets 28-20 win over the Giants. Vikings, they survive against the Patriots and Patriots fans, I'm sorry. I'm just not going to feel sorry for you on too much calls. It's not going to happen for me.
Welcome to the real world.
It's just not going to happen.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much, yeah.
It's not going to happen. So, we've all been burned very bad from calls here in big games with our team. So, what do you think, DA? Who do you think's better here?
I got to go Cowboys because their defense has been more consistent throughout the year. They had a couple of weeks where they were down. You can think about the Packers game and a couple of the games there, but overall, their defense is really good. And when Michael Parsons is playing D-line, like he pretty much should do all the time, that defense is a totally different monster. The Vikings defense it's really hit and miss. Patriots offense has been bad all year, and somehow that Patriots offense looked like a legit offense against them. So because of that, I got to go with Dallas because they have that. And also offensively now, you're seeing them start find a little rhythm here because they're running the ball more, going play action, easier passes for Dak. Plus you had the matchup the week before where Dallas demolished them, but that might be one of those games where you just throw away the tape. Maybe say Minnesota just had a horrible game that game, you throw away the tape. But I think Dallas is just better overall. And the Vikings, when it comes down to it, you still got to depend on Kirk Cousins, and there's going to be moments where he just forgets what's going on out there. Like when you go back to that previous game against Dallas, that first sack fumble, everybody felt Michael Parsons coming. Everybody except Kirk Cousins for some reason. So you have those moments. But I got to go Dallas because of that.
He was still trying to greet the neighbor or something. He was like mowing his lawns. Hey, that's Michael. Oh, that's Michael Parsons. I in the interest of my I'm seeing a girl who is now a Vikings fan. I'm going to have to say the Vikings. I do think that it's telling because in the post game, I don't know if you guys saw it in the locker room, Kevin O'Connell brought up the fact like everybody knows this team is hearing all of the outside noise, and sometimes that's bad. This team seems to feed off of it. And Kirk Cousins sucks in prime time. Well, this game started at 9 p.m. Eastern. Kirk Cousins had almost 300 yards and was 30 of 37 with 3 touchdowns. He had the one interception, but he pretty much played well enough to beat whoever they were playing on Thursday night. That's a good defense in New England too. I don't think that we can slouch at that. You kind of, being a guy that used to be in the locker room where we took a lot of those beatings like they did against Dallas, yeah, you just take that. You know that it happened. You try to avoid it in the future if you see them down the line, but you can't dwell on it. That's one of the good things that I saw. And I think Kevin O'Connell's the coach to kind of do that. I think if we see a Mike Zimmer Minnesota Vikings, they would be beaten down because they would have been in film on Monday like, you suck, this sucks, this is awful, this is why we lost this game 40-3. I think Kevin O'Connell took it, found the good things that they still did in that game, threw out the bad, and kind of just reset the whole mojo. That seems like they're building some sort of a culture there. And I do think that Kevin O'Connell is still a front runner for Coach of the Year and probably going to steal it away, maybe Sirianni at some point. But, the Vikings are in a good spot. They're in a better spot than I thought they'd be. I didn't think that they'd have this much control on the NFC North.
And Jefferson is just a beast. I mean, he's just so good.
Second best LSU receiver.
He's just so good, and that's what to me I just still really like Tuck too. So I feel like they're very dangerous as well. But the Cowboys for me also it's a tricky one because their defense has really performed well at such a high level this year. And so I don't know, Prescott. It's a weird quarterback kind of battle. That's why those teams to me are kind of so similar. It'll be interesting.
I think the head coach has something to do with this too. Mike McCarthy is a bozo when he thinks too much. When he doesn't think and he just lets his guys play, they're a very good football team. But when he gets in his own way, he got in his own way in that Thanksgiving game too. That's why the Giants played well. In reality, that shouldn't have been a one-score game.
That's true. That's true. I did that.
Sure.
All right, real quick here, we kind of make our way through the last kind of games here of the day, of the morning slate here. Go a little no huddle here. Jets, Commanders, they both end up victorious. Jets beat the Bears, 31-10. Commanders beat the Falcons, and gosh, just I don't know. That's just a game where unless you're a fan of those teams, it'd be rough to watch that whole game take place there. But with that being said, I was able to watch enough of it, and that's my question I have to you guys. So, DA, who do you got here? Jets or Commanders? You think they're both making the playoffs here?
Oh, that's tough. I can see the Jets if this is Mike White thing is for real. Like he performed really well today. Now the Bears defense is really bad. So it's a great team to make your start against and you have the momentum. But I've been saying for weeks now, all the Jets need is a C+ at quarterback. They didn't need anybody to be out there. They don't need, prime Aaron Rodgers. They don't need Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. They just need a C+ quarterback. Honestly, like Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill would be fine with the Jets, right? They just need that level of quarterback. And if Mike White can give them that, they can make the playoffs. That defense is that good. Like, it's that legit. And we saw today they have weapons. Like, Wilson is legit. He's like a legit number one receiver when able to, quarterback's able to give him the ball. So I believe more in the Jets than the Commanders just because Taylor Heineke is a great story and the teammates love him. You can tell that the chemistry is good when he's starting. But if you really look at it, he's not playing that well. They just happen to be winning some of these games. Their defense is improving throughout the year. But when it comes down to playing against better teams, when they need their offense to do something, they need Heineke to really come through. I don't see that happening. So I'm going to go Jets with the better chance to make the playoffs.
I think that they have a better shot. I really don't know. That's a crazy thing. I haven't seen
both would be in right now if they ended. They both would be in right now.
But watching game day this morning, I've never seen national media go after a player like they did Zach Wilson. Like Teddy Bruschi's out there. I don't think that he has the emotional maturity to learn the lesson that they're trying to teach him. Because in reality, they wanted Mike White to win this game, but they wanted it to be close. And then they wanted to show Zach Wilson, like, you aren't going to just have the starting job no matter what. And I think they wanted to move back to him. Now it's a quarterback controversy. And are you going to activate Zach Wilson so that he could possibly play next week if Mike White isn't getting the job done? Is the team going to give up on you if you do that? I don't know. One cool thing that I did see, though, Joe Flacco is embracing that role of backup quarterback. Mike White would go off to the sidelines, and with as bad as it was raining, Flacco was right there with that tarp. He's like, oh, no, you're not getting wet tonight. You're the starter. I got you. Don't worry about it. So they seem to have just a better team chemistry. And team chemistry goes a long way. The team that's local out here, they didn't have any team chemistry today. And they got trounced by a team that's awful. Like Carolina scored more points with a quarterback who hasn't played all season against the Broncos defense because of bad team chemistry. And in that mind, I think that maybe the Jets and Commanders both have a good chance of winning. if they play behind quarterbacks that they love, Washington loves Taylor Heineke, and I think the Jets are going to play hard for whoever is not Zach Wilson.
It's just funny how these teams sneak. I mean, I look at the Jets. I'm like, the Raiders, Chargers. I mean, come on, you can't have these teams get it. They can't have the Jets get in over you at the beginning of the season. Like to think
Raiders.
of that. Yeah,
are we talking about the Raiders right now as a playoff
I
team?
was at the beginning of the year. I was talking about the Raiders. Yes, I was. We'll get to them in a second. It's a big win, Jimmy, today. Big win. Don't you get it? All right. Speaking of Raider, I'm going to go get a little early take. We're going to go back to row one right here real quick. Fantasy player of the day. Gentlemen, anybody want to start out with one? DA, you got one maybe that helped you out today, or just anybody else you want to point out? Fantasy player of the day for you?
Yeah, my guy is actually still playing right now. Jalen Hurts.
Yes, I saw his stats.
He's my starting quarterback.
Yeah, he is absolutely killing it right now. 150 yards passing, which is not going to wow you, but he does have 2 passing touchdowns to go along with 147 yards rushing. Just absolutely killing it right now against the Packers, and still has most of the fourth quarter left. So Jalen Hurts is definitely killing it up there for fantasy player of the day.
Jimmy, you got anybody there?
I benefited from Josh Jacobs. I know that's where you wanted us to go. He dropped 40 in one of my leagues today. But I do think, like, a guy that I'm anticipating having a big day, Pat Freiermuth, the last couple of weeks has been huge at the tight end position, kind of helping out Kenny Pickett too, being that security blanket. It's not great, but he's putting up a good enough stat line that he's been able to keep me in some of those games. So I'm looking forward to having him. I have him and Jonathan Taylor, so hopefully I can make this little 15-point comeback that I got going on Monday Night Football. But it's kind of where I'm sitting.
And those are your fantasy players of the week, presented by Row One brand there. All right.
Can I throw a bonus one in there for you?
Let's get a bonus one in there. Row 2. I like it. Row 2.
The 49ers defense. The 49ers defense today against my Saints. They had to put up a crazy amount of points, shut out, forced a couple turnovers. They had to put up a crazy amount of points if you had them on your fantasy team. If you had a 49ers defense, you are welcome. My Saints gave you a great day today.
They did a very good job helping you with that. And speaking of the Saints, let's kind of get into that game first. Let's start with the late game, actually. Let's go Niners, Saints here to get us going here. Niners, like you said, they beat the Saints 13-0. 4-game win streak here for the Niners. Their defense just looks, to me, elite. And they lose guys. That's what I was like. I want me and my dad were talking about this during Thanksgiving. We want whoever is drafting for the Niners, linebackers, please go to the Raiders and start just get any of their backups. It doesn't even matter. Just take Niners players on defense. It's like, seriously, it's like, so there, to me, the question I pose to you guys, are they the NFC favorite? Maybe the Saints doesn't necessarily justify the win, but again, shutout to shutout. And again, it's just impressive how they buckled down. Like, even that, you had to be impressed, DA, even that goal line stand at the very end where it really wouldn't have mattered with 5 minutes left. They knocked the ball out of Kamara. They're hitting hard. That's what this team impressive. They hit at a different level than the other teams. And they do. That too. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, they don't stop, man. They don't stop. And in the second half, the Saints made some adjustments, were able to move the ball, like you mentioned, got down to the goal line and were not able to punch it in. That Kamara fumble, I was so upset because I'm like, he's fighting in. I'm thinking he's about to fight his way in. Ball bounces up. I'm thinking the Saints receiver's going to come up with it. Of course, he fumbles it as well. It just was a horrible day and an ugly game. The thing that concerns me about this game, the Saints defense is okay this year. It's not the Saints defense of the past couple of years. So the fact that the 49ers only scored 13 points in this game against the Saints is a little worrisome. I thought they were going to get like 24, 28 points against us in this one. So the fact they only scored 13 is kind of worrisome. And that would worry me if I was a 49ers fan going forward. Jimmy G, of course, is always the big question mark with this team, right? Can you trust him when you have a game where a stacked defense or a stout defense stops your run game and you need Jimmy G to come through and make some plays for you? Can he make those plays for you? That's what would worry me. But that defense is definitely phenomenal. You got to love Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, the weapons they have. But Jimmy G, can he come through for you? And he should have had a couple picks in this game. One big one was called back on a penalty that was a little questionable on the call. That should have been an interception. So it's something that's worrisome there, but their defense will keep them in all the games. So they're definitely a contender for sure.
You think they're the favorite, Jimmy, or does that go to the Eagles here? That's pounding.
They're just not. I don't see them as a favorite because of their offense, and it's weird. Like last year, I think if we had the conversation, Jalen Hurts or Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, there would be more of a debate. But Jalen Hurts this season has kind of leaned into what makes him successful. I just don't know if San Francisco is doing that with Jimmy Garoppolo, or I really don't think. Like, I did a reaction pretty much with my old podcast way back in that Super Bowl, and it was just Kyle Shanahan didn't trust Jimmy Garoppolo in those last 10 minutes. After he had the one overthrow, he basically took the ball out of his hands and tried to win it in another way. And he did the same thing when he was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. Instead of doing what was working, he tried to do it his own way. And there's something that doesn't click between the two of them. When your coach and your quarterback aren't clicking, it doesn't necessarily matter how good you game plan or how smart you are. It's kind of just up in the air at that point. So that's where I fall short. But their defense, like, I love the way Fred Warner and Hufanga play. I would, if I was trying to game plan against those two, it would be get 11 hats as close to those two guys as we can. Because if we can block those two, maybe we have a shot. But then you get a random Nick Bosa game or something like that. Drake Greenlaw goes off. They do kind of just fly around to the football. It's similar back to those late 80s and early 90s. I know that everybody thought they were finesse. Their defense used to hit. Like Ronnie Lott coming back from that safety position. The dude cut his pinky off before he missed a game. That's the kind of grit that this 49ers defense is playing with. That offense it's more finesse. It's a little bit soft.
It's not. Yeah, that seems to be. I think that's the reason why it's like that's the favorite part's a little tough there for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Hey, DA, maybe you can give us just a little quick here on the Saints. You know what they do from here. You know, you're on. You know, I mean, like their offense obviously beautiful. We've talked about the quarterback situation. You kind of just said you've kind of thrown your hands up. I think if I'm being honest with you, in some ways, right with it. I mean, I think Allen gets fired at the end of the year. I've heard you kind of go back and forth on it a little bit, and you know, in a way, because right, it's just like it's hard to tell when they win a game, but I just don't see him as head coach material. What do the Saints do? They look like they're in trouble right now.
Yeah, honestly, we don't have really a path forward, right? Because no first round pick next year. We went kind of all in on this year, and we going into the year, I thought we had a team that could make the playoffs. Defense still had a lot of those same valuable players that we had in years prior, where we had these top 5 defenses. And offensively, we added weapons. We thought we was having Michael Thomas come back, Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave turns out to be a really good pick.
Yeah.
But Dennis Allen, man, I just don't get sometimes what's going on. The whole Andy Dalton thing. Like, why are you sticking with Andy Dalton? Why are you being faithful to this guy right now? It doesn't make sense. And today it wasn't all on him. You mentioned the Kamara fumble and some other plays that happened, but you mentioned that goal line stand with like 5 minutes left. 4th down, you take a sack. 4th and goal, you take a sack. How? Like, throw the ball up. Like, just throw it into the end zone and hope something happens. If it's intercepted, cool. But you got to throw the ball up and give us a chance at that point. And to take a sack on a play where we need a touchdown and we're down 2 scores and pretty much in the game. Come on, man. That's the thing. Like, for me, I understand that Andy Dalton's supposed to be the safe guy. He doesn't make the mistakes that Jameis will, right? But with Jameis, if you get the interceptions under control, like we saw at the beginning of last year when he started off the year and his record, I believe, was 5-2 in the first 7 games, and you get him under control with the interceptions, then you have that big play threat also. With Andy Dalton, he'll throw the ball downfield sometimes, but he's not a playmaker. Yeah. And you need a playmaker against good defenses like San Francisco to make those big plays to get you into the end zone. And I just don't get it, man. As you can hear my frustration, I don't want to make this Saints podcast. I'm not going to rant too much longer, but yeah, it just was. Today was just super frustrating watching us, man. It was super frustrating.
I'm glad we've talked about the Saints before in here. Jimmy's talked about. We've kind of talked about the quarterback situation. I was like, yeah, it'd be great to get you. So your frustration is more real than ours, right, Jimmy? You can say.
Well, yeah, no, I understand the frustration. I had 11 years of Andy Dalton as my starting quarterback, and we get to the playoffs, but did we ever win a playoff game? No, we did not, because I said it a couple weeks ago, and I'm not even a Saints fan. If I was just watching the team, I want to see Jameis Winston or even now I can't even think, the Mormon Missile. Yeah, Taysom Hill. One of those 2 guys, because it's just going to be more exciting. You might still lose the same amount of games. You might still get beat in similar ways. They're going to be more exciting plays. And I think as a Saints fan, with no first-round pick, you have no real chance of maybe making yourself that much better in this upcoming season. You should be trying to do as many things as possible just to get people invested in watching these games. Because right now, losing 13-0, they're not – the Saints used to be a team that you could possibly see get flexed into some of these primetime matchups. That's not happening this year. It's
not at all.
just a little it's dumbfounding. Like, why are you sticking with a guy you know is just going to be middle of the road and keep you in the same spot?
Yeah,
it's absolutely crazy, man. And like you said, it used to be at least we were exciting if we were losing, but this year it's been boring and we've been losing. So normally every Saints game I'm tuned in, I'm locked in. I was watching, Raiders Seahawks. That was a really good game. I was, more tuned into that than I was for the Saints game. That Saints game was extremely boring. So I definitely get it, man.
Pay back for that 24-0 win over the Raiders earlier, though, right? I guess you got to get on the way.
That's the weird part. We'll have some of those. We had that game. We beat the Rams. I know the teams aren't good, but we had those games where you're like, okay, maybe we're starting to do something. And then we do this.
Yeah, exactly. That's what and that's the life of football. It's tough, and the Saints have that history of it. But all right, let's keep it going here. We got a little bit tight left. Got a couple more games here, and we'll kind of get our winners and losers, and we'll call it a show here. All right, real quick here, guys. Chargers, they beat the Cardinals on a 2-point conversion as well. Kind of weird that played out the same way. Kingsbury continues to probably lose his job at the end of the year. Just real quick, Chargers, do they and like sometimes there's these they have a Bengals potential to me in that sense if they got everybody healthy a little bit with the offense there with Herbert a little bit in that kind of sneak attack year. Is there a chance? We talked about the Jets. Maybe they Chargers switch with the Jets at some point there. What do you guys think? Are they a threat at some point? I know a lot of people had them as a sneaky Super Bowl pick at the beginning of the year. What do you think, Jimmy?
Just something lacking with their kind of grit. I don't know what it is. If they were a true Super Bowl contender, I think they win this game pretty handily in what's been a dumpster fire season for Arizona. So it's concerning to me. I enjoy, I played with guys like Austin Eckler in college, so I'm glad to see a guy like that having a great season. And when their offense is healthy, Justin Herbert's not the worst quarterback like I anticipated him being of that quarterback class. He's actually very talented. He can play at this level. There's just something lacking with that team. They need some extra, kind of like a Von Miller. They need some veteran leadership that's going to keep them consistent because right now, I think that they're still on that same track. The Chargers-Bengals game last year gave me the weirdest stat. Those were the two teams that had been up by and down by 20 points the most all season last year. And the Bengals somehow flipped the switch to be more on the positive side of that. And I think the Chargers kind of went the opposite way. I see the same thing happening where the Chargers are either getting killed by 15 or they're up by 20 or they're doing this late game 2-point conversion stuff. I still don't know if I trust Brandon Staley, but I don't know if that's the reason why I wouldn't see them as a Super Bowl contender. I just see in a big situation, they're probably going to fold like they normally did under those LT and Phillip Rivers years. It's similar vibe from that team that I get this year.
What do you think, DA? Same thing?
Yeah, with the Chargers is weird, man. Like you mentioned, all the talent in the world. And you mentioned having that veteran presence. Khalil Mack was supposed to be that. He was supposed to be there, Von Miller, right?
Yeah, and there's always that comparison, but I just don't see him as the same player as Von Miller. And that's funny to say because Von Miller's career started off terribly.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So he was supposed to be that presence for them. And for some reason, even though he makes some huge plays, right, it still hasn't provided that for them. And defensively, they were supposed to be better against the run. That was the big thing last year, right? They couldn't stop the run. Even that last game against the Raiders, Josh Jacobs was destroying them. And then they bring in the big dude to stop the run, and then they run to the outside. I still remember that like it was yesterday. They bring in the big dude to stuck up the middle, and it's like, okay, now we're just going to do a sweep to the outside. Like, you made it obvious what you're trying to stop.
Yeah.
So for me with the Chargers, man, I just, like you said, Arizona's not good. This is one of the predictions I had before the year. They were my quantum fall team. I would say that Cliff Kingsbury will be exposed as the bad coach that he is this year. And I thought the Chargers would win this game comfortably, right? I'm with you on that, Jimmy. I thought they would win this game comfortably. So the fact that it came down to them making a 2-point conversion, which is, kudos to them for having the guts to do it and winning the game in that way. But it shouldn't have came down to that. So because of that, I don't see them as true contenders. But I could see them sticking into the playoffs because the Jets, you still can't really trust the Jets offense off of one game against the Bears. So because of that, I can see the Chargers taking that last spot from the Jets.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with them. I feel like it's kind of a big year for their coach, too, this year. It'd be tough to then miss the playoffs 2 years in a row with Herbert as your quarterback. And, you'd have guys like maybe Sean Payton that would maybe want to come back for a job like that. You just don't know, right? Yeah. So that's in the book there. All right, when we have Thanksgiving here, we just finish it up this week. There's always the next day, right? And there's always good leftovers there. To me, a couple leftovers here from the Sunday was the Chiefs beating the Rams. We don't need to get too much into it, but I just want to let people know the Chiefs continue to work their business. And the Rams, they got their ring, they got their jewelry, and they're they're setting their vacation times. People, they're getting ready. The off-season plans are getting set.
1, 2, 3 Cancun.
There, it is definitely 1, 2, 3 Cancun as much as you can. So Chiefs beat the Rams there. They keep it rolling in there. We talked about the Raiders a little bit earlier. They beat the Seahawks. Jacobs, just the game of his life, 303 total yards rushing. Somebody wants money, people. He does. Somebody's going to pay him. I don't even know if it'll be the Raiders that pay him this offseason, but it'll be interesting. Running backs don't ever get paid. He's coming off a really good season. We'll see what happens at that position there as well. My little thing here on the Seahawks is kind of finally coming back to reality, I feel like, just a little bit here. So maybe just a quick little thought maybe on one of those games, guys. Nothing big here, but any quick little thought, Jimmy, on one of those?
No, I think the Seahawks division, well, it's not as tough as we maybe thought. They're still going to have to really push the 49ers to try and get that spot solidified in the playoffs, but I could still see them being a wild card team. Geno Smith has definitely outplayed any of my expectations, but this was kind of like, I feel like a couple weeks ago was the Raiders rock bottom. They now know, we might want to fire our coach, but we literally have no money to do so. So we're going to have to make this thing work. And after Derek Carr kind of had his diva meltdown at the podium, kind of realized, oh, well, this is going to be my quarterback or my coach for the foreseeable future, unless I'm not going to be a Raider anymore. So let's kind of get on board. And it seems to be paying off. I mean, back-to-back overtime wins, that's difficult to do. So I think that the Raiders, while they're not necessarily back at the spot where people thought they would be at the beginning of the season, it is a looking up section of the season. Whether it's going to continue on or not, I don't think that you can keep saying, oh, yeah, we're going to keep winning overtime games. But they're playing well so far.
Any quick thoughts on either of those games, any of those teams?
Yeah, for the Seahawks, that defense we thought was kind of turning the corner a little bit a few weeks ago, and now it looks like it's right back to where it was at the beginning of the season, where you're asking Geno Smith, as well as he's playing this year, you still don't want to ask Geno Smith to win games where you're giving up 40 points, right? Like, that's not something that you're asking, you want to ask Geno Smith to have to do for you. You want him to be able to, play off the play action, the rollouts. He's great when he's, they're running the ball and they're up and he gets to the play action rollout. He's great at those type of plays. And now when you have plays where it's a pass play because you're down, or it's a pass play because you have to keep up with the other team scoring, that's where Geno could get in trouble, because now he no longer has those options that you have with the run game when you're up. So I think that their defense has to do something to improve to make the playoffs. So it could come down to Seahawks and Commanders for that last spot. But again, the Commanders, I still don't believe in T. Henney like that. So we just have to see what happens with them. But it's going to be interesting to see if the Seahawks can claim that last spot.
I might start to believe in him with a nickname like that now. I'm starting to like that.
I think that's a good nickname. I think he should go ahead and take that from him.
I'm rooting for the replacement storyline to play out. They're going to beat Dallas twice, win 3 out of 4, and make the playoffs. That's what I'm hoping for.
Quick little update here. We're doing, obviously, the podcast on Sunday night. Eagles up 40-30 here. We got a high-scoring Sunday night affair with about 2 minutes left in the game, like DA mentioned, for fantasy. Hurts playing unreal there. So Packers look to be probably falling to the Eagles there again here shortly. All right, gentlemen, Monday night, quick little prediction here. What do you think? You got let's go with the spread. Let's not go with you can give me the winner too, but give me maybe all three. What do you think, DA? Give me the winner, maybe the points, and the over-under. What do you like?
Ooh, I like the Colts to win and cover -2.5, and I like the under for 39.5 on this one. I think Jeff Saturday is going to start a trend, man. We're going to start seeing more and more people hired off TV because he's going to be somewhat successful with this team. And I can't wait to see who the next domino is to fall from ESPN or Fox, because this trend is going to start now.
Did that hurt even more, Daren, when they beat you and you're like, well, we hired a TV guy as our coach and GM, and that didn't work out.
Did not work at all. It got worse.
It was also prophetic because he said like 2 weeks before he took that job, the Raiders just looked bad on Twitter, and then beat the Raiders in his first week. So maybe they did look bad. Maybe he didn't know what he was talking about.
He said, I'll take the job. That's my first game. Sure, I'll do that one. Who do you got, Jimmy? What do you like? What did I?
The Steelers put up a lot of points against what I think is a good Bengals defense, but it's going to be such a different game. I think that the Colts are going to try and take the air out of the ball as much as possible. If the Steelers would rely on Najee Harris more, especially with Kenny Pickett at quarterback, I would have more confidence in picking them. But the Colts at home, I would also go with the under. But I think the Colts have the ability to win. The 2.5, Yeah, I would take that because I could see the Colts winning by a field goal and covering that. But it isn't necessarily my favorite spread to look at. I would pick more of an outright winner, and I would say it's a good bet to go with the home team in the NFL so far this season.
Yeah, no doubt there. All right, 2 more things. We'll get out of here. All right, real quick here, guys. Let's start with you, Jimmy. Top 5 teams in the NFL doesn't have to necessarily be in order if you want. I think we probably could all be in agreement. We have the Eagles in there, right? We have the Chiefs in there. So it really comes down to me the 2, 3, 4 or the 3, 4, 5 spots. I'm guessing the Niners we have in there in some way for most of us. So who do you got there, Jimmy? Your top 5 teams here?
I do think that it is. I'm going to put Miami up in my top 5.
Okay.
I think that Tennessee has a chance to be in there, especially with the way that they've been playing. I'm going to go with my Bengals just because it seems like the trajectory is following the same way. And I know that Jamar Chase didn't play this week, but he's going to be playing by the Chiefs game. I think that's what they're trying to do. Make sure that you're healthy and 100% or as close to it as before you can get to the Chiefs game, because that's going to be just a nightmare to try and to overcome because they're pissed off. I think that's what they were running in a little bit today too. They were pissed off about the playoffs. Everybody thinks that the Bengals beat them last year on a fluke, so they're all trying to make up for what happened. And Tennessee came close, but the way that game ended and the fieriness that I saw in this Bengals team, I'd still put them up there in possibly a top 5. They're definitely closer to 5 in that currently, but I said that they weren't going to go on a run last season and make the playoffs, and they proved me completely wrong. So maybe I want to be on the good side of things this year.
We'll call them 5B then. We'll call them 5B at that point. There. What do you got? DA? Who do you got in the top 5 there?
So I'm gonna go Chiefs, Eagles, Miami, Buffalo, and then for 5, I'm gonna put the Cowboys at 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I see the Niners. That's a tough one for me. I feel like even with Jimmy G, I think that's what's holding us back with the Niners a little bit, is that Jimmy G factor there with it. Well, all right. Well, very interesting. We're getting to the end here. Like we said, playoffs are kind of starting to take shape here. Last part of the show here, like I said, we got Damian Adams here with me. I got Jimmy here from Far Into the Bench podcast. Guys, I do it on our podcast every week. Let's do it here. Winners and losers of the of the week, brought to you by SeatGeek here. Use the code VSN over at SeatGeek. Get $20 off your first purchase over there. I'll get it started first this time. I got loser of the week for the week this week. I got the Broncos, man. We didn't talk about them, so I saved it here purposely. It just continues to get worse. I know they didn't have it wasn't a big brouhaha between Mike Purcell and Wilson. They kind of seemed to have an agreement there with it, but man, you talk about a dumpster. You talk about your Saints. I mean, that team might be now the biggest dumpster fire now with the Raiders winning a couple of games here lately. So that's my loser of the week, is the Denver Broncos as a team there. So what do you got, DA? Any loser of the week here?
Man, that's a good pick right there. Russell Wilson averaged grandiose 4.1 yards per attempt today.
That's the best deep ball in the NFL, right?
Yeah. But for my loser, I'm gonna go Baltimore. I know they only lost by 1 point, but they're supposed to be, a team that we're looking at as a Super Bowl contender, and for them not to be able to close out that game against Jacksonville, and it seemed like they were going to close it out or pull away several times during that game. Several times where I thought, okay, this is where they start to get that, they're going to pull away and get a 13, 17, then 20-point lead, and they never could pull away. And eventually the Jaguars were able to stay around and get that win. I think this was a big loss for Baltimore as far as now the Bengals are right back in it as far as the division. And now we talked about the Browns earlier, maybe making a run when Deshaun Watson comes back. So that division is wide open now. And this game, I think, meant a lot more than people are going to put on this week when they talk about Baltimore.
That's a good call. Jimmy, you got a loser there for the week?
My loser's Atlanta, because they could have, as bad as their season's been going, they could have just kept the pressure on Tampa Bay with just a win today, and they're fizzling out at the complete wrong time. I had a lot of faith in Arthur Smith when he got hired as a coach there. I had faith in them last season when they had all first-round picks on their offense, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked since that Super Bowl season. And I would say that they're disappointing again because they had a shot, and now, even though mathematically it doesn't necessarily work out that Tampa's going to win the division, it's very difficult for anybody to say that Tom Brady's going to stumble down the stretch with what the NFC South is currently throwing at him. It's like being hit with half-filled water balloons that don't even pop.
That's good. They should get there easily. D, let's go to you for winner. Let's go to you for winner of the week. Who do you got this week for winner of the week?
For winner, I'm going to go with Mike White as an individual player. Came in 22 of 28, 315 yards, 3 touchdowns, no pick. Like I said, this Bears, defense isn't really good, but it's still impressive to come out and do that in your first game starting of the year. And now if the Jets are able to have a real offense, this team can be really dangerous. So I have to give Mike White my winner of the week.
You got one there, Jimmy? Winner of the week?
I'm going the let's see. I think I'm going to go the opposite side of what we've been talking about. I think that the Browns are probably going to be my winner of the week just because they've kept their ability to be in the playoffs. Like I said, it probably will change after what we see from Deshaun next week or maybe in the next couple weeks. But if they stay around that 7-loss range, they have a shot for the AFC North. They have a shot to get in as a wild card team. And they just have the kind of football style. They have the football identity that travels very well when you get to the colder months.
That's a good call. I had Jacoby Brissett as one of my winners of the week there.
But you can't be a winner when you're losing your job guaranteed.
No, I know. But that's kind of why I'm giving him winner of the week. It's hard as a human being to not have that type of instinct, right? So he did what his job was as the backup quarterback. I'm just saying I want to just kind of commend him for knowing that because you're right. That is part of it. I also had Mike White down. I had Jacobs, Niners, the defensive coordinator for the Niners is just on a roll this year. He should end up with a job as well. So those are our winners of the week. I like the real offenses. That was a funny one too. We got to get some real offenses. There was not very good some offenses this year. All right, hey DA, tell us one more time where we can find you at, my man. Thanks again for joining us this week on Talking the Gridiron. It was a pleasure to have you. Kind of get different insight there. Like I said, I love your podcast and I love the one you guys do at 3rd and 3 podcast. So just give us one last place where you can we'll find you at.
Thank you guys so much for having me. It really was a pleasure. You guys definitely bring both knowledge and great perspective. So I love, doing this with you guys. So you can find me at The Real Deal WDA. That's The Real Deal, W as in whiskey, D as in Delta, A as in Alpha on all social media platforms. If you follow me on social media, you'll get a lot of content. I'm always making videos, doing something different as far as tweeting, or I'm finding creative ways to, keep you entertained on the timeline. So go ahead and follow me. I'm a decent follow on all social media platforms. For my podcast, it's called The Real Deal with Damian Adams. I'm actually doing a new one tomorrow night. We're going to be doing we call it the 3/4-ish report of the NFL season, since it's no longer the 3/4 mark because it's no longer 16 weeks. So it's the 3/4-ish mark of the season. So we're going to, do our MVP and all the awards, and also do our top 5 NBA MVPs, since we're at the first quarter mark of the NBA season. So we'll be dropping that tomorrow night, and you'll most likely see it Tuesday morning on your podcast feed. So go ahead and check that out. And of course, the 3rd and 3 podcast Wednesday night will be previewing week 13 of the NFL season, with that one on Wednesday on Facebook Live at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Jimmy, how about you, my friend? Where can we find you guys at?
Yeah, you can follow us at FEOTB Pod on all social medias. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Since we've been doing a lot of Zoom, I've been putting the full episodes out on YouTube as well. So subscribe there, leave a like and a comment. This week, we're probably talking a lot of NHL hockey because the Avalanche are the only shining light that we have here in Colorado. I know Nico's not – if you saw our Twitter feed today, Nico was throwing out – you should turn on the Spain-Germany World Cup game if you're stuck in Denver without the NFL Sunday ticket, because that game was not worth watching. So we're going to recap this week of the NFL. We're going to get squared away on our pick'em. But yeah, we're going to have a ton of stuff coming up with college bowl season coming around. We're going to have another annual bowl pick'em show. My brother came home for the holiday and he's trying to come up with some weird video entrance for that show, but we got a lot of stuff coming up for the end of the year. So at FEOTB Pod, our new episodes drop on YouTube and our podcast feed on Thursdays, where you can find us.
And like I said, you can find us over at Fat Boy Fadeaway Sports. Check us out at Twitter, Sunday mornings on YouTube channel there. And like I said, the Variety Sports Network, the Sunday night show here, Talking the Gridiron. Jimmy, DA, pleasure doing week 12 recap with you guys. DA, thanks for joining us. Again, you're always welcome anytime. Be nice to have you on maybe as we get close to the playoffs here. Give us a quick preview of that.
Anytime you guys need me, man, just let me know, bro.
All right. Sounds good, my man. Guys, until next week. Peace.
Peace.